This is like my habit, basically. I only wear it for special occasions, so you're very lucky. Okay. It's my hair white.
Nothing good about this.
Right. The modern monk. Monasticism for all faiths and none. Got to start off with a little bit of a confession. Like, I'm actually like a Christian myself, but don't worry, I'm not trying to convert you to Christianity, just to monasticism. And like, if you've got any questions, then like don't ask during the talk because I haven't got time. And at the end, I've got to pack up and then like I've got work this afternoon, so I just won't have time then. But you can look on my website or email me, Tom Colban at hotmail.co.uk if you'd like to. And next time you see me, I can talk for hours about this stuff. So please do. For me, like monasticism, it's the kind of thing that do-gooders like to do. I think that a lot of people would be interested in it. And I think it's awesome, but it's like often because we think different people think different things, like about the worldview and about gods and stuff like that. But right now, like the world's in a place where we need to like prioritize life. Like this world, if we keep on living the way we live, then pretty soon we're all going to die. Like I hate to be morbid, but I think monks can be. I'm going to tell you a little bit about my story and a little bit about what monasticism is about from my perspective and why it's got a lot to contribute to modern life, and also like how it can contribute towards today. But a little bit about my story so you kind of understand where I'm coming from. In 2012 was a sort of a significant year for my thinking about monasticism. Because I finished doing a degree in youth and community work and practical theology at Oxford Centre for Youth Ministry, which is a bit of a mouthful. And on that degree, it got me thinking a lot about like religion and society and church and monasticism. So just going to talk a little bit about church first, what it got me thinking about that, and then I'll go back to monasticism. Like, I've always been going to church, and I've always loved it. Oh, I've got a cat. And
Last time.
Like
You've
church
been upstage.
cat. But church, like I was thinking, there's three ways that we use that word, church. There's like Sunday. There's like the building. Is sometimes we talk about church as a building. And then sometimes we talk about church as in the fellowship of the believers, so everyone who's a Christian is part of the church. But then also sometimes we talk about church as in Sunday morning gathering, like kind of like this is kind of a form of church. And it's like, I think I see it as the Sunday morning gathering. It's like a cultural event, intentional community that's built around, it has been shared doctrine. So shared theology.
There's a cat rubbing up against his legs.
Nice. It's got a tripod. Community built around shared doctrines, which is awesome as long as you all believe the same thing. But I kind of realised if you don't believe quite the same thing, if you've got a slightly different worldview, then you don't quite fit into that community, or you will always be on the edge of it. Even if the people are very welcoming, you'll just be on the edge of it. And I thought, what if community was built around values instead of doctrines? That would be quite interesting. And then I was on Facebook one day and I saw this thing, Sunday Assembly. I was like, oh, that looks interesting. An atheist church, what would that be about? And then I saw that it was like intentional community, like doing the Sunday morning part of church, built around values rather than doctrines. And I thought, that's really interesting. I'd like one of them in Reading. And here we are. I can't take much credit for it, but... So church is awesome, but then it also has its limitations. It's like 2 or 3 hours a week, whereas monasticism is like a 24/7 thing. So that's like a bit more extreme. And then again, monasticism is like intentional community that has traditionally been built around doctrines, but it could be built around values as well, just like Sunday Assembly. So I thought those things in 2012, and then also in 2012, after I finished my degree, my parents told me that they could help me buy a house. And I was like, wow, thank you. And I said, I'd like to move into an estate and start a monastery. And they're like, oh, okay. But they're very supportive, so I'm a lucky person. But yeah, let's get back to monasticism. What is monasticism? There's loads of different kinds of monasticism, like monasticism is really big in Buddhism and Christianity, and also it's in Hinduism. There's not so much of it in Judaism and Islam and Sikhism. Cat's back. And then I did a little search on the internet for secular monasticism and couldn't find much on it. There was a few people talking about it, and sometimes they were like Buddhists, because Buddhism can be secular. They don't necessarily believe in God, and it depends what you mean by secular as well. But there wasn't that much, and I think there should be more. Then you've got, at one extreme with monasticism, you've got like hermits and cloistered monks who, like hermits, go off into the middle of nowhere and stay away from everyone, and that's very extreme. Cloistered is very extreme as well, where they just stay in the confines of their monastery all the time and just dedicate themselves to like prayer and worship and meditation and studying and stuff, which is cool. But then at the other extreme, you've got like friars who are more involved in the local community, and they do a lot of stuff as well. And they still have some time for meditation and prayer and things, but it's not the main part of their life. And then you've got everything in between as well. And you've got some, particularly Buddhists, who do martial arts, which is cool. But I know more about the kind of Christian side of monasticism, and they don't do so much of that in the Christian monasteries that I've been to. Like, what's so great about monks? Like, if you're at school and you say, when I grow up, I want to be a monk, then it's not very cool, Not many people say that because they get beaten up. You can get away with it a bit more when you're older, from my experience. But yeah, monks aren't cool. But like the big issues in today, I think monasticism's got a lot to say to them. Like environment, poverty, war. I think there's an epidemic of depression around us in the West these days, and so much of that, I think, comes from living in a consumer society where the culture that we're surrounded by is consumerism everywhere. And because of that, we're destroying the environment. There's a lot of poverty. War's like to do with when people just can't get along, obviously. And like, yeah, depression. I think like consumerism, it separates us from each other, and it separates us from nature, and it separates us from ourselves. We become disintegrated inside. When we just, all we think about is like money and consumerism encourages us to invest in self-gratification and things like that. And one form of modern life, a kind of rhythm of life that could be lived today, is you could just live in your front room on the computer. You could work from home over the internet. You could shop and buy everything from home on the internet. You could do all your socialising on the internet at home and never leave your house like a cloistered monk. But obviously that just isn't very appealing to many people. That kind of life, I think, would cause depression in most people. Because we need to have these links with each other and nature and ourselves. But monasticism, it's like intentional community. I think in monasticism you can choose your values. You say, what is really important in life? And then, okay, I'm going to build a rhythm of life around that. And I'm going to invest in those values rather than what society might say. It's like a countercultural community. And you're doing it with other people, so that really helps. It's very difficult to do this sort of thing by yourself, to live differently from everyone else by yourself. What was I going to say? Yeah, and yeah, a big part of monasticism as well. Monks have traditionally always lived very simply, and that speaks very, very loudly to consumerism, which is quite an opposite way of life. I'm going to share a few things that I think are optional extras, and some things that are more important for the monastic life. So first, optional thing, I think strange hair is optional. Often you think of monks and they have a bald patch and then a bit of hair and then some more baldness and it doesn't look good. But I've actually never met a monk who has hair like that. That was more in a certain era, I think. And then facial hair is optional as well, but I think it helps. Not so much for nuns, but definitely monks. Celibacy, an interesting one. Usually monks have been celibate, but not always. In the Celtic monastic stream, which I'm particularly interested in the Middle Ages, they had a beautiful kind of spirituality. They quite often would be married, but if you were married to someone, then I think you need to have the same values and be living the same rhythm of life together, which would be it'd be different, but it'd be really cool. Children, I think it could work with children and a family as well. Again, you living in the community, a community together, doing life, but it would be a lot different and it would be more difficult. But it'd be really interesting to see. Funky outfits, like this is mine, and they're optional, I think, but they're quite cool. I was at a conference with lots of monks recently, and then one of them, a Franciscan. The Franciscans are particularly cool in my opinion. One of them, he got up and he was in his habit, long brown robe thing, and he was kind of encouraging everyone to go to environmental rallies and stuff and protests, and saying, and wear your outfits. It's a form of power dressing. It gets people's attention. I've got another friend called John who is involved in does sort of new monasticism in his community, and he does it he always wears red and black when he goes out in his community, so it's not exactly a habit or a particular dress, but just these striking colours, and when you see the red and black guy going past, it's John. Vows, an interesting one someone was asking about. I think in a secular kind of monasticism, in a religious one, you usually make it before God and the community, and whereas in a secular one, it'd be a bit like marriage. Marriage works, you kind of make vows in front of a partner and your friends and family. In a Christian context, it would be before God as well, but it doesn't have to be. It still matters if you do it just in front of people. And then finally, I've mentioned this already, but a prescribed doctrine, I think that's kind of optional. It works nicely for some to have, this is what we believe, but then it could be built around shared values instead. So yeah, moving on to the essential things, shared values, I think is particularly important. Also shared life, being in the same house ideally. Some would say you don't even need to be in the same house. There's some forms of monasticism where it's kind of even done over the internet, you share time on the internet a few times a day, or there's different ways of doing it, but ideally I think you live together, because that's part of the thing, living in community. Community a few hundred years ago, it just happened, but these days we have to intentionally make it happen, because in those days if you didn't have community then you couldn't live, but these days, as I say, you just live at home and on the internet all your life. Shared rhythm of life, so I think part of, a big thing in monasticism is the whole silence, or it could be worship or prayer or mindfulness or silence or some form of being still. Modern psychology is finding that actually that's really beneficial for human flourishing, to have a bit of time just to be. I like the idea of having 3 times of silence per day, or facilitating it in my monastery. That's the plan for the future. By the way, I'm not a monk yet. My house, I was going to say it earlier, but my house is going to be a monastery one day. I spoke to the Bishop of Reading about it and everything. He's well into it. but it's not yet. I'm kind of working towards it. I'll let you know when it happens. But yeah, having some time set aside for mindfulness is important, in my opinion. Community involvement is important as well. I think as I say, community doesn't happen that naturally, but we need to purposely work towards making it happen more. And then an interesting thing, self-denial. Like, monks have always been quite into self-denial, and sometimes that's taken the route of a kind of like self-flagellation, like in the Da Vinci Code and stuff, and like that comes from a Greek philosophical Neoplatonic idea of like the physical is bad and the spiritual is good, but that's quite different to the Hebrew, or like a lot of different perspectives that actually say no, like pleasure's a good thing, obviously, but self-denial in another way is an important part of monasticism. Like, if we are to live with other people, we have to make some sacrifices. And if we are to live simply on the earth, and in a way that kind of doesn't just destroy the world, then we need to change the way we live and live more simply. And that means sometimes denying things that we would prefer not to deny. Then, I'll just tell you a little bit about my ideas for the rhythm of life for my monastery. I want to call it Caedmon's, after a Celtic monk from the 7th century. I want to have about 3 or 4 people living there, and then all of us working part-time, and then like 3 times a day between us, facilitating these times of mindfulness or stillness, or depending on who's there, it might be more like worship or liturgy, or it might be just silence, or it might be, for some people, maybe knitting, or something that stills you. And facilitating that so that anyone can join us at those times. Hopefully there'll always be someone in the house to do that. And then the rest of the time, investing in like the garden and the local community, doing volunteering and all very idyllic stuff. I'm a bit of an idealist, if you haven't already noticed. But that's just what I think would be cool for my monastery. You might, if you start a monastery, you might want to do it differently, and that's great. A few ideas of suggested values that I think works for people of all faiths and none, like existence, life, and love. Like, those 3 words say quite a lot and not very much at the same time, but like existence, it is good that there is something rather than nothing. To celebrate that, that's part of what Sunday Assembly is all about, celebrating that existence is. Life is like the next level, you know, like a rock's great, but a worm is like on another level, and then a worm to a human being, like, whoa. And love, and some people vomit when they hear the words, but like, which is fair enough, but like, we all know that at the end of the day, that's what it's all about, you know? Trying to love each other is hard, but it's what makes life worthwhile, and like, we need rhythms of life that help us to become more loving. So existence, life, and love. I think if you don't believe in God, if you do believe in God, if you believe in 100 gods, whatever, that's what it's all about, really. I've got a few books in my bag. Just coming into land now, okay, guys. So here's a good book, Community and Growth, about like living in community with people, how difficult it is, but also how much you can gain from it and how it benefits you. And this The Irresistible Revolution is like a crazy American new monastic guy who's doing contemporary stuff. It's a Christian one, but I think other people would find it very interesting as well. The Rule of St. Benedict is kind of funny. Again, it's a Christian one, but it was written like in the 5th century, and it's like all about community living, and a lot of it's kind of funny because it's really out of date and crazy, and it's really, really practical. But it's interesting if you want to know about monasticism. And then a new monastic handbook, From Practice to Vision. That's got some ideas about the practical side of it. Moneyless Manifesto is a really challenging one about living in a totally different way of life, by a guy called Mark Boyle, who lives without money. And I'm sure I have another one in here. There it is. Religion for Atheists. Some of you might have read it already, and the bottom. But it's really, really interesting. And finally, just want to leave you, I've got 5 seconds left, with 3 questions for you to mull over. Oh, I'm going over time, sorry.
That's a good alarm.
Brutal.
Right, off.
So yeah, what are your values? You know, what's the most important things to you? What do you want to build your life around? Secondly, do your rhythms of life reflect that currently? And thirdly, what's your plan? How do you want to move from where you are to where you want to be? Something to think about, like 5-year plan or whatever, or what little steps can you make in the short term and in the long term? It's good to think about these things. So that's all I had to say. I think we're going to have a song now.
I think we're not.
Oh, we're not having a song now.
Get either the names or the ISBN numbers of those that put on the Facebook page.
Yeah.
Do you want to post on that?